Hello, hello, and welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you're familiar. My name is Jen. I'm with innerworkcoaching.life. And, before I get really into what I wanted to talk about today, which I've been kind of mulling over since yesterday, I think it's very important about language and labels and the power of words and the power that more specifically we give the words that we hear and speak. But first, I wanted to let you guys know that, it's so funny how many little synchronistic kind of coincidences there are and that kind of tend to play out when you're in this zone of looking, of observing, of paying attention to it. It's very exciting and it's really, really encouraging. At least that's how I feel about it, because I'm like, no matter what the circumstances might be, and a lot of people, including myself, are facing multiple crazy, you know, challenges, I'm going to say, challenging circumstances, challenging situations, challenging quote unquote problems to solve, things that we have to resolve. Um, and I think that all comes from within. Like, things that need to purge themselves from our lives are going to show up in our experience. So that way we have the option to either play into it the same way we did before, or to make a different decision in the moment, which is what our free will is all about, right? So today, I pulled, first of all, I hung out with one of my closest friends over the last weekend, and he gave me this tarot deck right here. It's called the Prisma Visions Tarot, and it is just gorgeous. And I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't gotten a new deck in a long time. I don't really purchase things very often. I'm really not into the whole 3D thing, and it's kind of biting me in the ass now. But that's what I'm learning about. That is my challenge, right? So I got these cards over the weekend, and this morning I pulled the first three cards. I shuffled and I kind of, reflected on them and pulled my first three cards. And the one I just did a very simple past, present, future reading, a 3-card pull. And the present card was the Two of Chalices reversed when it first came out, but I was like, oh, I'm not really doing reversed, so I flipped it over. And then I Googled the meaning of it because I wanted to refresh myself, and I don't know all the meanings by heart. So, a lot of times I doubt myself on knowing what the card actually means. So I'll look it up instead. And when I Googled it, the Two of Chalices in reverse showed up first at the top of the thing. So I'm pretty sure that was supposed to be, how the card landed. The other lovely little coincidence that I wanted to tell you guys about, and this is again just examples of tying things into experience that are kind of magical, that I am manifesting. Whatever I focus on grows, right? So I'm currently reading The Richest Man in Babylon. And just the night before last, I sat and read it for about 2 hours. And today, I came across a video that's an older video by one of the people that I follow. Her name is Amanda Flaker. She does kind of like the same thing that I'm working toward doing, creating online classes and teaching people about emotions and how they work and how powerful they are. And she did a video in 2017 about that book, The Richest Man in Babylon. It's called 5 Laws of Gold for Empaths. So if you want to check it out, I'll put the link in the description. But I thought it was just hilarious that here I am focusing on this book, and a day and a half later, I come across something about it on YouTube, so it's like validation that I'm on the right track. It's yes, here, keep learning this, keep doing that. And so that's what I work on. That's the kind of ways that I let life lead me, I guess. And I sing about it, and so it can only go up from here, right? Anyway, so I wanted to share some of those funny little coincidences with you guys, because energy manifesting itself into my experience. And I hope that it helps you to recognize when you're experiencing the same thing more easily, you know. Because like I've always said, or like I've said several times before, I had a really tough time tying the experiences into the concepts, or the concepts into reality. And so that's kind of what I feel like I need to do, or part of what I feel like I need to do. So, having gone over that, I would like to talk to you guys a little bit about labels and language and words, and kind of becoming more aware of how we use words and the labels that we place on our circumstances, on other people, how we talk about things, for example. One really common and generalized example is that if you are always talking about your problems, like you run into someone that you haven't seen in a while, and the first thing that you go to is talking about all the things that you're trying to deal with, and that just makes all those things that you're trying to deal with in this quote unquote negative sense bigger and bigger and bigger, because that's what you're focused on. And it's totally growing underneath the surface in the unseen dimensions so that it will manifest more and more and more. Now, if I hadn't started actually observing this in my own life, then I would still be a little skeptical. I would still be like, oh, whatever. That's not how things work, but it really is how things work. So, one of the things that really has been striking me and like kind of making itself known in my perception is about labels that tend to carry some sort of negative connotation, right? Some sort of emotionally triggery label, right? And one of the things that I really, really thought of that was the most obvious one to me are, or the most obvious ones, because it's been probably almost close to 2 years since I've woken up from narcissistic abuse and various other different things that were very, very traumatic to me. And kind of took all the steam out of the labels, you know, and started seeing things in a way that took the steam out of what certain other people were telling me and how they were interacting with me, because there always seems to be like a oh, you're a piece of shit kind of undertone to the way certain people talk to me. And I can feel that, you know what I mean? But these days, rather than playing into it and taking the bait, so to speak, because when people lash out like that and try to hurt you just to hurt you, it's usually because they have something going on in themselves that they haven't looked at. And so that realizing that has allowed me to start really letting things go and not play into other people's stuff too much, like, of course, I'm only human. It still happens sometimes. You know what I mean? The idea is not to be perfect. The idea is to be the best person that you can be, that only you can be, right? So, one of those words, or a couple of those words that were really, really, really triggery for a while, but that are kind of like, it's just a word. It's just a label for a set of personality traits, um, are narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder, or and or the words abuse or anything associated with abuse, right? So when these words, these types of words still trigger you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be narcissism or abuse. It could be adultery could be a trigger word for you, or homosexuality could be a trigger word for you, or polyamory could be a trigger word for you. BDSM could be a trigger word for you. Anything that has like these weird emotional kind of like things that come up, a lot of times you can trace it back and ask yourself, well, why is this such a painful experience just hearing a word, because really it's only a word. It's a label for something. It's not an actual thing. And a lot of times with labels, it implies that things are binary, that things are black and white, right? And this black and white thinking has been something that that's something that I talk about with people all the time, have conversations with people all the time about, because it's very dangerous. It's very dangerous to limit yourself to only one extreme option or another extreme option, one being quote unquote right and the other being quote unquote wrong, with no feasible things in between. And that's not how reality really is. Reality is on a spectrum. We are complex systems within complex systems, and our emotions are complex. Our life experiences are complex. We don't always see all the information that we need. And so, like, allowing words to have that kind of power over you and essentially close you off to learning new things about those kind of words, right? Because if a word is triggering to you and it makes you uncomfortable, then usually the first instinct is to lash out and, like, rah, rah, rah. You know what I mean? No, don't attack me. I hate you. And it's really not meant as an attack, but maybe or maybe it is, who knows? You know what I mean? But if you choose to take the wind out of the sails of all of these words, then you become unfuckwithable. If you choose to be offended at every little thing that rubs you wrong, then you are completely fuckwithable, and people will fuck with you. People will mess with you, and they'll still try even when you are non-reactive. They will try and bait you into arguments. They'll try and bait you into, you know, um, sliding backwards into being less than your ideal, genuine self. Trying to bring you back to their level of vibration, so to speak. And there's nothing bad or wrong or whatever about any of this, just so we're clear, okay? These are very, very simply put labels. And if you desensitize yourself to words, but resensitize yourself to actions and behaviors, okay? Develop the understanding that words are just the surface and they're nothing to worry about. What there really is to kind of work on and quote unquote worry about is the stuff underneath those words, where the words are coming from, and why your emotional system is responding in such a way to a label, right? Now, of course, nobody likes to be called names. Nobody likes to be, you know, put in that kind of situation, because it's scary. Confrontation sucks. It's not fun, but sometimes it has to happen. And the less that you are able to be swayed by someone using words that they know might trigger you on you, the more empowered you will be in your own life, right? And then if you think about a topic and you think about it enough, then the trigger will start to fade out, the emotional trigger, because then your system is going to readjust to becoming more and more familiar with this topic, and gain a much deeper understanding, because really we're all the same. We are all eternal beings having a human experience. We all have the power to either tap into abundance and love, or we can tap into lack and fear. And all of our behaviors and thoughts and emotions can be traced back to either one or the other. That is a little bit binary, but as you do this work, you'll see all of the things being on a spectrum as well, every single thing, you know. And then you'll be able to start seeing different perspectives and be more understanding and compassionate, which is kind of what it's all about, right? So, the whole thing that kind of brought this up is that one of my kids was on Facebook and there was some argument about some meme got posted about these are not gender neutral terms, and it included mate and lad and dude and, guys, like, hey guys, you know. And so my kids and I were discussing this, and we kind of thought that was a little dumb, not like that the people creating it were dumb or anything like that, but that perspective is very limited. It's focusing on the labels, the surface level, rather than focusing on what's underneath. And what's underneath is actually what's important, because what's underneath is what causes all the hateful, horrible, mean, despicable behaviors that we justify by throwing labels at these people, right? And this whole thing about labels is a little bit dehumanizing, because after I stopped really using the word narcissist, because I didn't really want to focus too much on it. I wanted to understand what happened. I wanted to understand what played out in my life. Um, both from just my life perspective as well as from a generational and genetic perspective, as well as from a collective and historical perspective. Because if you really think about it, there's been warmongering and fear-mongering going on for thousands of years, and it's compounding on itself. And this is why we have so much upheaval right now, because it's all coming to a crescendo. And the more we as individuals are able to work with ourselves and work on our own triggers and work on our own emotional bullshit, bullshit belief systems, then the more we will be the change that we want to see. Now, when I was operating from a programmed belief system, I believed in war and I believed in patriotism. And I believed that, I believed all the propaganda that they want to throw at you. Everybody's evil and they're out to get you. People are terrorists, anybody from another country is out to get you and out to take your job and whatever. And that's all nonsense. It is absolutely nonsense. And the way that I was able to start seeing how nonsensical that kind of thinking was by completely just kind of taking back the labels. And after not using them for a while, um, and really considering what the deeper aspects of meaning are, I found that they really don't trigger me that much anymore. The word abuse, well, it sucks. If you have an associated experience or several with that word, then those experiences will come up for a while and you may not even be aware of it. But every time you hear that word, every time someone's talking about abuse or abuse survival or you're a target or whatever, then, or victim is another big word, big label that has a lot of negative connotations attached to it. But as long as you allow those words to have those negative connotations and trigger your emotional traumas without working through them, then other people will still have power over you. And your sense of empowerment and self-worth will suffer every time you're confronted with a situation that requires you to deal with some of these triggers, right? And so um, there are several ways, there are a number of ways, I'm going to say, to kind of take the power out of those words. And one of the biggest things that helped me was just talking about it. Talk about it. Talk about it with someone you trust. Talk about it with people that are reasonable, who can help validate you, especially at first when you're first starting to really handle all of this and get a grasp on it. And then also keep in mind that labels, these words, don't mean the same thing to everyone, right? And they mean different things to people who are not familiar with the deeper meanings and experiences and aspects of the words than they do for people who have essentially gotten familiar with and studied the topic and understand it at a deeper level. Um, because once you understand it at a deeper level, it cannot be used as a weapon. It probably can be, but you don't want to, because it's not really a weapon. It's just, inflicting more pain. And that goes against the non-aggression principle, where you do no harm against someone else. And if you're sitting there attacking someone with words that affects them horribly, then you are essentially doing harm on purpose against that person and attacking that person. And we do this on an unconscious, subconscious basis a lot. A lot of times we're not even aware that we're jabbing a knife into someone, with our words. And so in order to prevent that from happening, either receiving or attacking, so to speak, or sending out, once you examine your own trigger words and really get to the root of why this is a trigger word, why is this making me so angry? Why is this making me so freaked out? And really, anger is just fear. All of these negative emotions can be traced back to fear, usually the fight or flight response, because that is what we're programmed to live in by our society, by the world. Everybody's out to get you. There's no place safe. You can't run, you can't hide. The government is watching you. All of these fear-mongery things that we're conditioned into believing, right, keeps us in a perpetual state of fight or flight. And then we wonder why we have all of these health problems, and why we have all of these mental health problems, and why we have so many issues that just translate into every area of our lives. And it's because we're perpetuating the fight or flight attitude. And that's also based in a lack mentality. If you're abundant, then you have nothing to fear. If you're in lack, then you have everything to fear. And you don't really, but your mind will have you convinced that you do, And the more you get into that and the more you play into that, the more permanent the circumstance will seem, which is why it is so important for us to take complete control over our vibration. All right, just a minute. My phone is ringing. All right. Yeah. So I definitely had to answer that. That was important. But I wanted to, I think I pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover and made some of the points that I wanted to make. But I want to reiterate to you guys that the idea is to be trigger free. By becoming trigger free, you empower yourself. We empower ourselves by working through our own baggage, by working through our own triggers, because then all that crap going on out there and other people projecting and whatever it is doesn't throw your whole world off. It doesn't throw your whole entire trajectory anymore, because you are in an emotional state of being that is more healed and more loving, rather than being triggered all the time. And now, this is especially important for people who have been through abusive situations, who have maybe dealt with people in the past who traumatized them, and it may have even seemed like it was done on purpose. Whether people inflict trauma on purpose, I think depends on a case-by-case basis. It probably varies. And then you have to consider, are they aware? Are they consciously aware? Or is this a subconscious thing that's created through programming, that, like addiction, you know what I mean? Or like self-sabotage, lots of our behaviors are subconscious, and we can end up really messing ourselves up if we are not really looking at these triggers and how they affect us, and how they affect us on deeper levels. For me personally, it was a lot of abuse. I still find myself slightly, I get that slight little pang with certain words and terminology and stuff. because there was trauma in the past surrounding that. However, okay, so I'm going to suggest something a little bit radical here. Because I prefer to understand and to embrace and to be compassionate rather than trying to make enemies of everyone. And this is not always easy to put into practice, and sometimes it takes a while, to get to this point, especially if something crazy happened. But when I work through my own triggers, right? Words, especially because we're talking about labels, right? So I used to, and this is just how the programming affected me versus how I'm thinking now. And it's like a night and day difference. Okay. I used to think that war was necessary, that killing in the name of patriotism was okay, and that everybody around was going to be horrible or whatever, or humans are dangerous and we're, the the scum of the earth or whatever you want to say. However, when you really think about it, if you're thinking that about all humans, then that's being reflected back to you, and you're really thinking that about yourself too. And so if I'm sitting there, and you have to really learn to discern between when you're projecting and when you're not. But if I'm sitting there and I am, hang on, sorry, and I am, let's say I'm emotionally triggered and projecting my past experiences of abuse onto someone that I don't even know that well, maybe, or just making assumptions based on my past experiences about a person that is not from my past, then that infuses that situation. Because remember, as human beings, we are transmitting and receiving all the time, energetically. We never stop. So whatever it is we're transmitting is what is going to come back to us in our perception. So if we are thinking, oh my gosh, this person's abusive or a narcissist or, whatever label is still triggery for us, or uber Christian, and they're going to totally like freak out on me if I do anything that's not Christian, these are just some examples, then we project that experience into our future timeline with that person. And whether it happens the same exact way or not doesn't matter. We can choose to interact differently, even if it does happen similarly, especially if it's a repetitive cycle of experience. You can learn how to recognize that and to just basically do something totally different in the moment, you know? And that's the idea. That's the idea behind growth. And that's the idea behind spiritual evolution. And that's the idea behind becoming unfuckwithable. When you don't have any triggers, people and circumstances can no longer fuck with you. And you will be focused on what you need to be focused on. And everything else is just, okay, that's your problem, or I can't do anything about that. It's all out of my control, you know? It's very interesting. It's very interesting looking beyond the surface. And I really hope that this video helps at least some of you to get to a point where you are unfuckwithable, where your triggers come up and you just sit with them for a minute and you say, okay, do I really want this to be able to be my downfall? Do I want this word, to be able to be my undoing? Because it throws me into an emotional meltdown. Like, is that how we're supposed to live life, or are we supposed to heal ourselves and learn to understand what's going on rather than fight against it, rather than lash out at it? So that's just some of my perspective. I was very inspired to do this video, so I hope that it resonates. If it does resonate and you find it helpful, please don't forget to subscribe and share. And also, if you want to dive deeper into healing yourself, I cover a lot of these topics in my class, Defusing the Love Bomb. So if you're ready to diffuse your love bomb, I will put the links in the description. And there's 3 different options. You can either purchase it on Gumroad or on Udemy or on Teachable. And I believe Teachable and Gumroad are the ones where there is $111 off right now still. So if you want to go ahead and do that and take advantage, also on Gumroad, each lesson is available individually. So if you don't have like a larger sum to invest, you can go $25 at a time, and that would be kind of cool if you've already done some self-healing and you just need some, deeper insights into certain topics. And you can check that out on the innerworkcoaching.life website. So there's that. I hope that you're having a beautiful, beautiful week, everybody. I think this week is a time of kind of turning things around and being excited and trying something new. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had massive breakthroughs and shifts in my perspective since April 1st. And actually, it started with March 31st when I had this dream. I asked in the evening for a dream to help me know what is true and to help me be encouraged and tuned in. And I ended up experiencing the event in my dreams the night before last. And like yesterday, was it yesterday? I don't know. It was Monday, and I think today is Wednesday. But anyway, so I was totally like flying high there for a while, um, for a couple days, and it's still going. Like I'm still feeling inspired. I'm still feeling kind of elevated, and I'm still having insights pop up and breakthroughs come through. So I hope that you guys are having a similar experience this week. I know some people are having a tougher time than others, but learning how to work with our emotions is probably the most effective the most effective skill that I have learned in dealing with spiritual awakening and the 3D crap of life all at the same time. And this is coming from somebody who is always overwhelmed, and I need to recharge, and I can't. There are certain things hindering me from even getting a traditional job at this point. So, um, I have to really stay focused and really be in my highest vibrational state in order to even survive at this point. So, if you want to know how to work through your triggers on a deeper level, action steps, exercises, mindfulness techniques, tools to help you, then I highly recommend that you check out my class, because that's basically the work that I've been doing for the last several years, all kind of rolled into one. So there's also a book on Amazon if you don't feel like doing the class itself, or if you would rather read. And the book itself, I believe, is $33. So if that's your preferred method of learning, then by all means. Although I will say that the videos have a lot more content. It's not a transcription. It's basically the outline and the content that I created to create the class from. So that's what the book is. Anyway, but it'll give you a lot to work with. I hope that you guys are having an absolutely beautiful week. And if you have any topics that you'd like me to talk about, some of the things that I'm kind of mulling over and planning are a series on broken systems like the medical system, the educational system, there's lots of them. There's a ton of broken systems that we're dealing with and that we are inside of, right? We are moving parts complexity, complex systems within these complex systems. And that's why it's so tough for people to really get a big picture perspective, is because everything's so fucking complicated. So anyway, I want to start talking about that. And then there's a collaborative kind of thing going on where I want to have a discussion with someone about another topic that certain people will find a little controversial, but that's really at its core about infinite and unconditional love. So stay tuned. I don't really have a set timeline. Like I said, I'm trying to put all my stuff together so that way we're not constantly, feeling like we're in transition. And yeah, I hope that you guys enjoy your week, and I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Namaste, my friends. Have a great one. And remember, be unfuckwithable.